Meanwhile, the White House has broken down the impact of the jobs bill on individual states. For example, Wyoming would get at least $157 million for infrastructure projects that could support at least 2,000 jobs there. The state would also receive some $52.5 million to support 700 educator and first responder jobs. It would receive nearly $12 million for community colleges. Senator John Barrasso, Republican from Wyoming, joining me live now from Capitol Hill. Senator, good afternoon. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it.
Have you read the 155-page plan?
Still working my way through it. Want to go through the fine print and see exactly what is there. But I did see that the president wants to raise taxes on a lot of Americans. 90% of this is paid for by impacting individual taxpayers, anyone making over $200,000.
Before we get to that, is there a part of the plan, or are there parts of the plan that you believe there can be some common ground reached between the president and you and your Republican colleagues?
I'm looking for common ground with the president in the sense that we need to make it easier and cheaper for the private sector to create jobs. I agree with the president when he says we have to get these free trade agreements passed and signed so that then we can continue and hire more people that way. So I have concerns, though, in terms of how the president plans to pay for this. And, you know, the president in his speech the other night, he said, I know 500 kind of reforms that can come forth in terms of the regulations that make it harder and more expensive to create jobs, but he didn't eliminate any of those in this jobs program.
Let's show folks here really quickly the highlights of the jobs bill that we've been talking about. Among other things, $175 billion there in a payroll tax cut, $70 billion for new investments for employers, another $140 billion for infrastructure, another $62 billion for extending unemployment benefits. We've talked about the cost of the plan, but $250 billion of that roughly would go toward employee and employer payroll tax cuts, along with some other tax cuts aimed at helping small businesses. Historically, Republicans celebrate tax cuts being used as an engine to spur growth. Will that be the case this time around? Will you guys at least rally around this idea, the tax cut idea?
We need tax reform in this country, across the board tax reform, Craig, in ways that we can close loopholes, make it easier to understand, make it cheaper to comply with the tax laws in this country. We need to get people back to work immediately. You know, I've come out with a Western jobs plan, a program that I've had actually a press conference before the president did his, to talk about things we could do to help us as a country become more energy self-sufficient, dealing with our energy security. Those are things we need to do. I want to work with the president on this. And you specifically asked if there were things, any parts of this that were good. Right. And
you mentioned free trade.
And then my concern is that this morning, the president's now head political man, David Axelrod, said, oh, no, this isn't a like choose here or there. This is a take it or leave it plan. And with the taxes that the president is proposing to increase, Republicans and Democrats alike in a bipartisan way voted against that in the past. So there's actually bipartisan opposition to some of the things in the president's plan, which to me, I'm not convinced he can get it through the House or the Senate.
Wyoming Senator John Barrasso. Senator, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Craig.